Hey guys, it's Rachel with Be Healed Dog Training with my Quarantip of the day, and this one is going to be about how to stop jumping and why that's so important. Sorry about not making it on earlier this morning as was originally planned. If you look back in my Facebook stories, you'll see why. A little bit of an interesting morning. But anyway, so I'm hopping on now and hopefully some people can jump on and maybe ask some questions. But jumping is a problem that a lot of people struggle with. A lot of dog owners struggle with this, and one reason that so many people do struggle with this is because there is a lot of, to be frank, really crap training information out there about how to stop jumping. And I know that before I've learned the training methods that I have found to be so effective, I had come across a lot of the same material and content. I've tried it, I've seen it fail. So to kind of get into why so much bad information is out there as we get into the idea of positive only training. That is really a really popular trend right now in dog training, is the positive only, the pure positive training. And basically what that means is that there is no consequence or punishment, that everything is done through positive reinforcement. And the problem is that's just not a realistic look at how the world works. The world is made up of a balance of reward and consequence. That's just the natural part of life, and that's going to be the natural part of life with your dog. And so when we try to take out the concept of punishment for an unwanted behavior, we struggle with those unwanted behaviors. So for example, when people are struggling with jumping, and positive only trainers are putting out information saying to ignore the behavior, first of all, that's just ineffective. Really popular training tip is to ignore the jumping until the dog stops. Don't give the dog any attention until the dog stops jumping. That's fantastic. So you're supposed to stand there or try to go around your house with your dog jumping all over you and just ignore it. That's also not safe. Not only is that obnoxious, it's not safe. If you've got a large breed dog, you're getting raked by claws, claws raking down your back. You've got dogs can knock you over, they can trip you up. Even small dogs can trip you up, jumping all around your feet. Especially if you have guests that visit, you've got somebody elderly come over, a young child come over, somebody who's injured. I've walked into the house on crutches before and been like, I'm really glad my dog they've got good manners and they're not jumping all over me. There are lots of reasons that you want to make sure that your dog is not jumping on people, and plus it just gets annoying. So anyway, ignoring it, not very effective. Another common one is to, again, it kind of goes along the lines of ignoring. Wait until the dog stops and sits, and then you praise and you give a reward. Again, in that case, you are actually praising the entire act. You're not really able to praise the dog just for the fact that they sit. The dog is kind of seeing this bigger picture of, ooh, I jumped all over you and then I sat and now I get a treat. So even if you try to reward the good behavior that's following the bad behavior, if that makes sense, if they're doing an unwanted behavior first and then they stop and then they do something good and you reward it at that moment, you're actually kind of rewarding that whole cycle. So you want to be careful with that. Another really common one that you hear is to cross your arms and turn your back. And that's the one that I had been told to do when I had my dog Belle. And what I ended up with was, as I mentioned earlier, claw marks down my back. Every time I walked in the door, I stayed consistent with it. And I had a dog jumping on me all the time. I used to work in a kennel. I've had dogs jump up and bite me in the nose just from being overly excited. Not aggressive dogs. So you don't want to have that level of excitement going on. You need a dog that can control it. So the most effective way to stop that behavior is to have a consequence in place for jumping, to have an appropriate punishment in place for jumping. And understand that when we talk about punishment and consequence, that is not synonymous with being mean. That's not synonymous with being angry or yelling. A proper punishment is done in a very calm, matter-of-fact manner so that you just have cause and effect. So when I am dealing with a dog that's jumping on me, step one is to watch your own energy. You want to be very calm and neutral when you're dealing with this situation. You don't want to be riling the dogs up because that's only going to make it worse. And you also don't want to be yelling and screaming at the dog because you just don't need to. Instead, what you want to do is, I have a couple different methods I use as far as the actual punisher involved. So you can use a bonker, which I have an example of here. I'll show you. You can use a pet convincer. You can use a prong collar and leash and give a leash pop when the dog jumps. Or my favorite is the remote collar. And so all of these should be approached the same way. So your bonker is just a wrapped up towel. So this is just an old beach towel. It's wrapped up and secured with rubber bands. It's flexible. There's no metal rod stuck down in here. The concept with this is that the dog approaches, they jump on you, you calmly would say no and throw this at the dog and hit them firmly in the head. And I promise you, first of all, you're not going to hurt your dog with a towel. You're not. Trust me, I throw these at my family members for fun, okay? You're not going to hurt them. But when you do this properly and with conviction, and that's the thing, you can't just, I see a lot of people get kind of timid and no, and just kind of whack the dog. You don't want to nag the dog, right? You want to give a firm no, and I'm not going to do this because I've got dogs relaxing and being quiet and I don't want them to think they're in trouble. But you would throw this very, very hard and firmly at the dog's head. And basically what happens is the dog goes, whoa, I jumped up on you and it was unpleasant. I don't want to do that again. It will not make your dog afraid of you. None of these punishers will. Sure, you may have a moment of, whoa, what just happened? But then when you just move on with life as normal, they're going to realize, okay, I don't jump on you. And if you've never seen a mother dog correct her puppies for jumping all over her, then maybe that's why so many people hesitate to provide punishers, because I've seen great examples of videos of mother dogs being extremely firm with their puppies for jumping all over them. And I'm talking biting, growling, teeth, snapping. But then once the jumping stops, she's mom again, and the puppies are still her puppies. And anyway, I just want you to feel comfortable with providing a consequence to stop an unwanted behavior, because it's the only way that you're going to effectively and immediately stop an unwanted behavior. I'm actually working on trying to get more videos showing this. So far, I believe I only have one video on my YouTube channel that shows how to stop a jumping dog with a remote collar. One reason I don't have videos is because I can't get anything else done easily if a dog is jumping all over me. So typically it's the very first thing that I correct, and I correct it once, maybe a second time, and it's never a problem again. And so I haven't captured it yet. So anyway, bonker, excellent tool to use. A little bit hard when you're using it by yourself. This one is a little bit easier to use if you have maybe a family member that can stand there while you're standing over here. The dog approaches the family member and jumps, and you would say no and throw the towel. You don't want to just try and hit the dog. You want to throw it, projectiles. It's more about surprising the dog because you're not trying to hurt them. Again, you can't. But as far as your other tools that you can use, I don't have mine on me, but there are things called a pet convincer or a pet corrector, and it's just this little handheld little device with a trigger on it that shoots a blast of air. So it's kind of the same concept as a keyboard cleaner. You hit a little button, a puff of air comes out, it makes a loud sound that startles the dog. And so dog goes up to jump, and you can use that pet corrector. Not always super effective, but some dogs highly effective. The bonker, most dogs this is very effective with. Some dogs think it's a toy. Usually though, if that's the case, you're not using it firmly enough. And then you can use a prong collar and give a leash pop. Prong collar is not going to harm the dog. There's lots of information out there that says that it will. It's not true, and I'm not even going to get into that on this live because we ain't got the time. But I've got plenty of other videos that talk about this. Prong collars, a well-made, well-fitted prong collar is incredibly safe and arguably the safest collar out there. And so again, you would have your leash actually soft and loose. You would allow the dog to jump up on your nice family member that you're going to give a beer to afterwards for helping you. Allow your dog to go to jump up on your person. You've got the leash. The key to this is that your leash is soft and loose as the dog goes to jump. And then you would give a quick, firm pop and release. And you're not trying to pull the dog off of the person. You want it to be a pop, and it's a very, very fast motion. angled kind of down towards the ground. So if you do that right, you should not have to correct more than once or twice, and the dog should go, okay, I get it. And then your remote collar, really simple concept. You've got your remote in your hand, you dial it up to a level that makes the dog's feet come off. So how do you know if you're at the right level? Every dog works at different levels. You know if the dog stops jumping. So you set it up at, a number that you think will work. The dog goes to jump, you briefly hit that button. It's just a brief tap. Throughout all of these different approaches, you are staying calm and neutral. Calm, no consequence. No bonker. No leash pop. No remote collar correction. And just to go back to the remote collar, if that level isn't high enough, you go up a good bit higher and you give a quick tap and the dog comes off. Now, one more thing I want to finish up with, and then I've got to run. What's really important is what happens next. So the dog jumps and you correct the dog. Typically what happens is the dog will go, whoa, I shouldn't have my feet on you. And a lot of dogs will sit, or they'll just kind of stay with all 4 feet on the ground. At that moment is not the time that I want to correct the dog because of what I mentioned earlier. Because I don't want to give the dog a reward for jump sit. I want there to be a correction, and then I want to kind of reset the stage. So I correct the dog, I'm going to then lead the dog away, set them back up to jump on the person, and then when they make the correct decision the first time, meaning they approach the person and they don't jump or they go into a sit, now I want to give them the reward. And that's just really important for any unwanted behavior that you are trying to stop. It's just important that when you are trying to reward the proper behavior, that you've got good timing with that. So dog makes a mistake first, dog does the wrong thing first, you're just going to correct, stay neutral, remove the dog, repeat the process, and then when the dog makes the right decision the first time, praise and reward. One other thing to mention with that praise and reward, that should also be done in a very neutral manner. So if your dog does a great job of not jumping on you, and then you bring them back over and you go, good boy, because he sat, what's he probably going to do? He's probably going to jump, and you're going to have to correct him again. Now, you can proof the dog to that, and that is important to proof the dog, but usually I don't want to do that the first time I'm addressing this. Once I get a dog that's not constantly jumping on me, then I'm going to challenge them more. And I'm going to do things like, okay, maybe talk to them in an excited, high-pitched voice. And again, that might sound mean, like why would you do something to make the dog jump on you just so that you can correct it? Because you want to proof the dog to real-world situations that could happen. If you have a visitor come over and they go, oh, your dog is so cute, you can't sit here and tell all of your visitors, shh, be really calm around my dog. That's not fair. You need to teach your dog that, yes, even if someone is being excited and animated, they are still not to jump. So you want to set them up and create that situation in a controlled way where you can then address it when you're prepared to. Now, what would not be fair is to tell the dog, come on, jump up, and then correct them. That is when we cross over into that line of being like, okay, that's kind of mean, that's unfair, let's not do that. But it's totally acceptable and appropriate to go, let's set the stage for something that this dog might actually encounter, and go ahead when I am ready and prepared to correct it and do it. And if the dog jumps, calm correction, and they go, oh, it's not okay now either. So that's our tip on stopping jumping. Feel free to leave questions on this if you'd like to, if I'm missing any key piece of information. I do have, like I said, one video on my YouTube at least that shows kind of a step-by-step how to correct jumping with the dog with a remote collar. Again, I'm going to keep doing these tips, usually around 2 o'clock in the afternoons. Today got a little bit wonky, but I'll have more tips coming up for you guys. So thanks for those of you that are on. I see if Stephanie, if you're still there, hello. Lee, hello again. I see Michelle, my aunt, hey. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow.